questions.
Welcome. We'll go straight to Senator Cadell.
Thank you. Look, I've got some concerns. I'm not going to pretend. Ostend. Let's go straight there. I don't ever think a book should be banned. I'm not in that. But the classification of being able to sell it to anyone, even with a 15-year-old guide.
Yep.
I've read your reasons, but clearly gang rape scenes of young girls and women in a book that is available in libraries and sales, in an atmosphere when we've had the E-Safety Commissioner here, we're hearing 1 in 4 girls are facing sexual harassment, if not online. It promotes the wrong message. We've had cry-out from Brave Hearts, we've had cry-outs. I mean, the co-chair of the National Office on Child Safety, who's a member of Brave Hearts, said no. I find it hard to rationalise in a world that objectifies women so badly, even reading your reasons that it's part of I get it's part of a criminal or dismantling of a child over sexual predator ring. I get that. I get the context of it. But to make it available for all people, how do you get to that level? How do we respect women enough at a board that says, I mean, it is gang rape. It is that. It's not even. You don't even pretend it's not in these books. It is a sexual predatory ring. How is that approved for general sale?
Thank you for the question, Senator, and I appreciate the seriousness of the topic. In assessing all publications, the board follow the classification of publication guidelines from 2005. That's what the board did in this instance, as you pointed out. Classified the publication as N, not recommended for...
Not recommended, but available, yeah.
But available, yes. So the board aren't in control of the guidelines or enforcement of the guidelines. That's something that's agreed by the Commonwealth and states and territories. So when dealing with this sort of information, this sort of publications, the board's only recourse is to follow the guidelines, which they did in this case and in all cases, and hence the classification of M not recommended to readers under 15.
It says in your ruling, sex is not high in impact and is not exploitative, offensive, gratuitous or very detailed. It is gang rape.
It's a literary... Yes, I understand. When looking through the publication guidelines talk about context, terms like artistic merit, and the fact that we're dealing with a fictional written account of fictional activities.
If I put a video of the acts carried out on the internet, if it was a video and not a book, it wouldn't even get shown at all. I would be charged for the acts that are on that video, let alone not able to distribute it. I find this...
Even if it was a fictionalised drama.
Yeah. If it was consenting adults pretending to play this role, I would be charged. How is the differential between print and depiction? I just have trouble grasping this.
I understand, Senator. So the classification guidelines for films and the classification guidelines for publications are different.
And this isn't an anti-government thing for me. I'm having trouble understanding what would we need to do so this book wouldn't fit into that guidelines. That government, our government, any government.
18 plus.
18 plus. 18 plus. I might not, love the book, but I would understand that. What do we need to do that?
A review of the publication guidelines is what we would need to do. And in our submission to the Stage 2 reform consultation last year, the board outlined some recommendations around looking at the publication guidelines and considering a more informative set of guidelines to deal with publications.
Okay. So you were hamstrung by the guidelines as they were, that book... I have trouble finding when it says sex is not high in impact and is not exploitative, offensive or gratuitous. I don't know what is more than a gang rape scene of young women, but young girls. So I find that classification, I think, potentially, if it is that, because it is exploitative, it doesn't fit under that category. Wouldn't you agree?
Perhaps I'll let Mr Thompson make any further remarks about the particular decision in relation to this book, but I wondered if I could come back to your broader question about what's the reform pathway and what is required.
I could read it. No, I'm not going to read out. I've done enough bad things in it. I'm not going to read out
Thank you.
what that is.
Yes.
But
No, please don't.
no, I'm not going to. But I will. Another one, the comic book that's been similarly hated by young women and stuff like that. It's won't name it so everyone goes Googling it at home. But there's a sex scene where a man is in a comic book pulling her hair, burying a woman's head in a pillow. And I will say these words, and I'll bleep out the Fs. You stupid slapper, I'll come to your house and I'll kill your husband, I'll kill your 2 little kids, and I'll, expletive deleted, kill you while he's having sex with a woman doing this thing. The same thing again. If that isn't exploitative, if that isn't offensive, if that isn't gratuitous, if that isn't fear of non-consensual, when someone's saying it, I know you're saying that in that magazine, reading the ruling again, that it's these 2 antagonists come together and they do this a lot. In a world that is meant to be respecting women more and valuing them and protecting them when we're trying to protect our youth from such violent stuff, this is a comic book where this exists. Is this exactly the same problem there?
Can I think,
Do you want the name of that?
You're pointing to the issue that's actually the subject of the reform process that's underway, which
Right.
is that since these guidelines were established, the world has changed a great deal, and there are a range of different mediums through which content is provided to users and consumers, and the way that they are treated from a classification perspective is not consistent. And this is a source of quite significant frustration for people who voice very similar kinds of views as you do. They might differ in terms of where the line ought to be drawn, but this lack of consistency between the different media is one of the things that is the subject of a present piece of reform that's underway. So we've got a number of reviews that have already been undertaken that sort of indicate that this is not fit for purpose, that technology's moved on to a point. So essentially the department has initiated consultation about reform. The submissions, as I've indicated, highlighted the fragmented nature of governance and regulation and supported consolidation of the classification function into a clearer governance framework and a more clearly defined scope of content that would require classification. And so the government is now working with the states and territories to update classification guidelines for publications, for films and computer games to try and bring some of this consistency about and address some of those community concerns around gender-based violence, around mental health themes and around sexually explicit content.
You mentioned computer games, something I haven't even put in my questions because I think I'll play my AESD or whatever, the things that make me feel good because I've got a bit of the ADDs. Those games, I'm playing an anti-screw game where you just get screws out of different things. The ads come on for a role-based play where a boss has to seduce his secretary. I haven't downloaded the game, but the ads, and you make decisions on, like, again, objectifying women. You know, at the end of the thing on the ad, it says, you know, stay the night or leave. You click leave and it's wrong decision on the hand that comes on the ad. You know, these are the things that I get there. That is a digital platform and it's an ad. And I know things are changing and technology is changing. And I get everything you say about reform. I understand that and I back it and we'll get that far. It comes down to me to this phrase, and I go over it to the third time. Sex is not high in impact, is not exploitative, offensive, gratuitous or very detailed. And I go with it, and I think that is a board situation, not a guideline situation. That is a judgment call. If group sex, forced rape of young women and young girls isn't offensive, exploitative or gratuitous, what is?
So I'm just going to let everyone know that we've got, well, we're over time.
Sorry.
So, but I appreciate the situation here and the question that you've asked. Mr Thompson, if I could just give you a chance to respond to that and then we will need to move on.
Yeah, so like I say, I appreciate the concerns around these issues. The board classify a huge range of material including material, as I mentioned in my opening statement, that is submitted for law enforcement purposes. So the board see a significant range of material, and the level of impact through a fictionalised written account as opposed to a video or an interactive game or real-life law enforcement material is very different. So the board's frame of reference for this sort of stuff is informed by some of the worst things that the board of protecting Australian consumers'
I
rights.
fear for some of your people what they see.
Yeah, so that's not to trivialise the issue, but that's the environment that they're working in.
Okay.
Thank you.